What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock, what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to do some in-depth technical analysis and give you guys my price prediction for tomorrow based off what the charts are showing and based off what the data is suggesting. I'm also going to break down some very important metrics coming out for Tesla and the SPY, which are very important for everyone to understand because we are seeing puts being loaded up left and right. I'm also going to break down some important quotes from Elon Musk for the future and also for anyone in general. But before I do that, before I get into any details about Tesla and Elon Musk and my price predictions, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Don't take any of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. Not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is, any of these 12 free stocks could be a free Tesla share. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 5 days. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So, looking at Tesla, we were down about 4.59% for the day on Friday, and overall we're down about 13% over the last couple of days. Now we did have somewhat of a rally that really pushed us to that 313 level. We really saw the bears kind of like take control of this stock after that, especially after the big announcements that were made by Jerome Powell himself. Now Powell did mention that there is likely going to be a lot more pain for the markets because of what they're doing to really tackle inflation, and he is taking a more abrasive stance than before. So as a result of this very abrasive stance and the things that we are seeing in the markets, we're seeing the whole market just falling in unison, and Tesla's now getting dragged into this mess. But there is something very important I want to note about the price action of Tesla. Right now, Tesla still looks weak. We are not seeing a clear indication of a bounce just yet, but I do believe that just for the short term, we could actually see a small rally. I'm not saying we're going to rally to all time highs. I'm not saying we're going to come back to this like $300, $320 level or anything like that. I am saying though we could actually get a small bounce during one of these early days of the week. And I feel this way because the first thing right off the bat you could know from common sense, if the market drops really hard over a very short period of time, we tend to get somewhat of a relief bounce, at least almost instinctively. And that's what tends to happen in the markets. Additionally, we also have a history lesson from the past. If you look at the options chain for the SPY, you will notice that the put to call ratio is crazy for September 30th. We have a 2-to-1 put to call ratio. This means that the large majority of institutions, investors are loading up on those puts, getting ready to short the market. And when one side goes a little bit too far, the market makers, the manipulative hedge funds and institutions, they tend to take advantage of this and they tend to make money on the options chain when we see one side going a lot too hard. So the opposite is what tends to happen during big moves like this. So there could be some pain for those holding lots and lots of puts during this time frame. Now, this doesn't necessarily guarantee that this will happen. I'm not saying this guarantees the market will just bounce, but it tends to be an indicator of that. If you look at Tesla, very similar story from the options chain as well. We're noticing that there are actually a lot of puts that were bought for September 30th. We tend to see this very balanced. It's actually not that bad, but it is actually just a sign that a lot of people are turning very, very bearish and they're expecting a big crash to start like right now. Now, for the markets, I will say one thing, and that is when you look at many big indicators out there, like if you want to look at the 10-year treasury yield, we're seeing some crazy things going on, seeing it just going up with these high interest rates from the banks and so on and so forth. And it's been a while since we actually saw it at such a high level. It's been very, very long periods of time. If you look at the weekly, I mean, it's been many, many years since it went up this high. And the truth is, our economy, it isn't necessarily fully ready for these big changes to these interest rates. So that's the reason why there could be a lot more pain still yet to come. And this may have a negative effect on the markets going forward. So does this mean that we're just going to crash to new lows tomorrow or like this coming week? It doesn't guarantee that just yet. And if anything, I am anticipating a bounce relatively soon. But for the future, for the next few months, maybe like approaching November, December, we could still see more pain if we are seeing more fear being instigated by the markets, by the news, and so on and so forth. But until then, always note one thing. And let me just give you guys an example on Tesla. Let's use the daily. When you look at Tesla, all right, during these big drops, I'll give you an example. During this drop right here, when we went from 384 all the way down to 206, we didn't just fall in a straight line. We came down, we pushed up for a couple of days, we came down again, we pushed up in these like cycles. We pushed down, came up, and then pushed down pretty hard. What did Tesla do recently? We just went down, 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 down a little bit too hard. And I am anticipating a bit of a push to the upside with all these gaps that were formed. If we look at SPY, for instance, SPY has so many gaps now. There's actually one like right over here on the daily. And I'm not saying it's going to take us immediately up here, but there's one right here. There's also another one that's very key that will take us to that like $370 level. So I do see SPY bouncing relatively soon. But one very key zone would be that 362 level, 362.5. What I'm thinking is SPY could actually come down, retest 362 and get a big bounce off that. And in addition to that, if we look at like the Nasdaq and other things like that, very similar story could be said. Look, if you look at the IWM, same setup. We have this like big gap down here, and I am anticipating a nice bounce. If you look at the Nasdaq, for instance, very similar stories as well. It's just happening all over the place. And what I'm essentially seeing and what I'm anticipating is the market is getting ready for these big changes. Now, I want to go back now and look at Tesla. One thing I'm noticing is the fact that first off, it's dropping very hard. RSI is looking pretty weak, but on the smaller time frames, when we look at these other indicators, we are seeing the momentum is just not looking the best. Let me look at the 30-minute chart real quick. You will notice that on the 30 minute, it does look like Tesla wants to bounce off this 272 level, but I'm not seeing this as being the very key bounce zone. I was looking more at that 268 level because that gives you that Fibonacci retracement zone. 268 is where we could see Tesla get a very decent bounce. I'm hoping that we actually hold this range and show a little bit more strength before we get somewhat of a push from there. Now, if we look at other technical indicators out there, the price pairs ratio is going up for Tesla, meaning that Tesla has a tendency of now moving a lot harder than the overall market, and the positive beta is becoming a lot more prominent. This means that if the market's like down again another 2 or so%, Tesla is likely to be down even harder than that. But if the market finally gets a bounce, Tesla can make better moves to the upside as well. Overall, the net volume, we have a very big zone around that $280 level. I would like to see Tesla push right back up to that level as well. And I am hoping we see it maybe sometime this week. Remember, everyone, or at least a large majority of investors, are just betting on Tesla crashing. And when that happens, we tend to get those bounces almost out of nowhere. Now, from a technical standpoint, we're not seeing the signs of the bounce yet, which is why I don't necessarily think we're just going to immediately bounce from this zone. We could drop a little bit more before the bounce comes. And that's the reason why it's important to know support and resistance levels. So, with that said, let me just show you guys support and resistance. If Tesla gets a drop down again, okay, if Tesla just comes tumbling down, just like how we saw it tumbling down before, what you have to watch for is that 272 level. If we break below that, I'm going to be watching 268. And if that doesn't hold us, that's a very key zone for Tesla, then 265 followed by about 260. So those are all very key support zones. I think one of them should be the zone where Tesla bounces from. I'm actually guessing around 268 to 265 should be the zone we bounce at, especially after SPY may drop like another few dollars. And what I'm trying to see is where Tesla goes from there. So Tesla has this nice gap up here. If you're watching Tesla and Tesla pushes all the way up, we have some resistance at 280. We break past that, we are most likely going to see a big push all the way up to this 288 level, and we may end up refilling this gap to the upside. Now, we will have some resistance at 285. I would like to see us break past that if we get a push up. Then the 288 to 290 zone is where this thing could go. So, what am I essentially predicting for tomorrow? Well, considering how the market has a tendency of moving, some of that bearish momentum may continue at least temporarily. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla kind of chops around this 272 zone and maybe wants to get a bounce. It could happen immediately. So it is possible for Tesla to actually just start to bounce up like this, retest 280, maybe have some resistance right there. We might slowly get some pushes above this zone because we tend to see lots of volume, lots of price action up here. But I'm not anticipating us to just rally like crazy hard in one day. I still think we're going to see some chop like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla were to close kind of like this. Now, another possibility though, before we start to bounce, would be we could come down first before we get the bounce as well. So if the market is set for a little bit more red, I'm hoping that SPY gets a nice bounce off that 362 zone. So during that same time, what Tesla could do is we're going to try to hold 272. It may not hold us, so we could end up coming to this very key zone right here, which is excuse me, between 268 to 265. We could end up retesting this zone, seeing some chop here temporarily, and then finally get a nice bounce if we see a lot of volume starting to come in. If lots of bulls start buying and buying and buying, then we could actually get a break to the upside like this, and maybe get a nice push into like power hour, pushing us very close to that 280 zone. Very similar to what I mentioned, but just a different version of the bounce. So both of these are very possible, but I am anticipating that this one right here would be a little bit more likely. So please be prepared for anything. And remember to watch your support and resistance levels very carefully when it comes to these big things that are coming. Now, one of the reasons why I think Tesla's also more likely to bounce from here and maybe push up just a little bit this week is because we do have AI Day coming up very soon. And during these big events, there tend to be these very high expectations. Now, one thing that's very important to note is the fact that investors, people that are interested in Tesla, they tend to have extremely high expectations for Tesla to do very well. People are expecting Tesla to unveil like this new robot that almost resembles a human. It's extremely cool. And I wouldn't necessarily keep my hopes too high during events like this because sometimes hopium is not necessarily your friend. So this doesn't mean that Tesla isn't a great company. They're amazing. But if you push a company too hard and make these unrealistic expectations, it makes the company not look as good as how great it actually is. So the big thing to really focus on would be how are Tesla's margins going to be affected, especially after everything going on in China right now? How is Tesla going to continue to be profitable? Are we going to see a big spike in demand for these cars in like places like China and other countries that are taking big hits? That's going to be just as important as something like AI Day. So that's what I'm really focused on. I want to see how this really reflects in the next quarterly earnings report coming out within the next couple of weeks. So I'm still very optimistic, but we need to see how the adjustments are being made, especially to their margins during times like these. With commodity prices potentially going down, that could be a good sign for them, but we have to wait and see how that really goes. When it comes to this event, maybe we get some more bullish price action, but if expectations are too high, we could get a drop after the event if it doesn't necessarily meet those expectations due to the way a lot of consumers really look at Tesla. With that said, I want to end the video with some very important quotes from Elon Musk himself. Musk actually liked this tweet right here, and he mentioned that there are grander things that we should be considering than the pettiness of everyday life. And I really agree with what Elon Musk is talking about because in our lives, guys, we have a tendency, or at least people all the time have this instinctive emotion where they just look at the smallest little things like how someone dresses, how they walk, and things like that. That isn't to say that these things are at least somewhat important, but there are much greater things of importance from how we actually learn to treat each other, how we actually improve our daily lives, who we surround ourselves with, and those are very important in our lives to come. This is a very important quote from Elon Musk. Please remember this for the rest of your lives. And please note for Tesla, I am anticipating some, maybe a little bit of bullish price action, at least for the short term. Hopefully, we do see this 288 gap get filled over the next couple of days because we do have AI Day very soon, just a couple of days away. And I am anticipating some kind of like decent price action thanks to that. Now, just because we push up a little bit, just because Tesla pushes up a bit, do not get way too excited and just hyped up just yet because the market is still going to be choppy in my honest opinion. We're not necessarily out of that like peak fear zone just yet, and please be very wary of the headlines and the news that's coming out from the Fed because that's going to be very important for Tesla as well, as the Fed is now really dictating how stocks are moving, at least for the time being. With that said, thank you all so much for listening. Enjoy your weekend, and I will definitely see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon because the long term future is bright, and peace out.